Been a little while. Okay. Let's go live here. There we go. Nice. Hello, everybody. So good to be with you again. It's been a while, I know. But we all get busy. I'm sure you've been busy. Hopefully you've been doing well. I put a post up in the community section like a week ago. Said I'd be doing this live. So in any case, welcome to the Christian Witnesses of Jah, CW Jah Tube channel. And we do a variety of different shows here. My background is in biblical history, Christianity, different religions and periods of time and peoples related to the Bible and periods talked about in the Bible and ancient history, as well as linguistics, languages. And I've been involved in these studies specifically with regard to languages, Hebrew, Greek, and in the past year plus or so, Latin, which I'm really enjoying. So a lot more in that regard coming, and I'll talk about it more as I get kind of further along in the next set of my educational pursuits. But really, that's kind of just a complement to the time I've spent on my own and in prior educational pursuits and just with people, including the Watchtower and people related to it, people opposed to it, people who don't belong to any group. I've been doing biblical studies for well over 30 years. And so as Christian Witnesses of Jah, we promote three things above everything else. On my experience and other people's experiences, like I was just talking about, we've come to the point where we realize that the Bible's very clear, okay? It's very clear that we're not supposed to go beyond what is written. There are a lot of things that aren't clear in terms of like they're explicitly stated, written. Jesus repeatedly used what is written to defeat the devil in his misuse of texts. The New Testament, the apostles did and said the same thing. Don't go beyond what is written. Don't embrace what's next. Okay, so when in the New Testament, we read how Jesus and his first followers, the apostles, that those same historical records in the New Testament tell us we're supposed to be teaching what they taught, and they teach what Jesus taught, or they apply things taught about Jesus to him. So we're not supposed to go beyond, just like they didn't, neither Jesus, right? It is written, nor the New Testament Christians do not go beyond what is written. We're not supposed to do that. And when we have a disagreement, according to the New Testament, everyone in the area of the disagreement comes together, whether it's Matthew 18 or in the book of Acts 5:20 or elsewhere. When they had a disagreement, they came together, they resolved it with the Holy Spirit, and there was no dissent. There was no pagan emperor. And he sure didn't contribute a key term to the resolution. No, what we have in the Bible is enough. Now you may say, well, how would you know that you need the Bible if you didn't have it during a time when it wasn't available to you and we gave it to you and all that stuff? Well, because we're a law to ourselves. Have you read that text? The people that don't have the text, we are a text. We have the text in ourselves. That's the whole point of the Garden of Eden. We know. The lie is that we don't know, and that's the sin that results when we fool ourselves, lie to ourselves, and say, no, I'm going to do this. Or we suppress it, and we still know either way, right? We do things that are wrong. We know they're wrong all the time. That's how we know. So, yeah, no, we didn't always have every text that we have today available to us the way we have today, but we've always had that law in ourselves of being able to know good and bad. That's the whole point. And according to the New Testament teachings that we're supposed to promote, that's enough. Did you know that? You all did, right? Because you've read the New Testament, you know it says very clearly people can be a law to themselves. That doesn't mean that we always do things right. It just means when we do things right and God sees that it's right and he knows we're doing it because of the law in ourselves, he accepts that. Because we didn't have the opportunity to follow the text, it would have represented otherwise. Now, because of all this confusion, right? Those same texts, the master tells us, right? There would be what? A field as big as the whole world. And what would happen in that field? Master would come and plant seed. And then what would happen? The enemy would come and he would do what? He would sow weeds, right? You know how the Romans and other hostile enemies would, like for example, with Carthage, the Romans sowed salt, right? So they couldn't use those fields. Okay, well, we don't have salt here, right? Because the master's not going to allow that. He's going to allow the testing to occur. Father wants to see so that we can conquer and be champions of Christianity. So there's a difference between the Romans and what God's allowing the devil to do. I'm sure he would have sown salt. I'm sure he would have killed every Christian he could have. He was going to kill the newborn Christ as he entered heaven, firstborn from the dead. And that's why he had to get thrown out. He had to be punched right out of heaven, right? Who did that? That's right. So, yeah, he's down here basically under control, but allowed to do a lot of stuff because of us and our condition, right? And the whole thing we have to go through, which he's a big part of, the biggest part of. He is the one who brought it to us, but we chose, and so it's on us. Now, though, we got all these weeds, right? And we've had them since when? Since the devil decided to sow his weeds. Master came, sowed the seed, sons of the kingdom. Devil came, I believe after he was thrown out. Master was made king for a century after his resurrection. Videos on that if you want to search for text related to it. So then the devil came down and he sowed those weeds. Right, and those weeds were allowed to grow. The angels went to the master and they said, Master, a bunch of perverts came and went insane. Yeah, they don't work and they don't take care of their kids and they lie about the Father and blaspheme everybody. But they have time to come and sow a bunch of weeds in your field. Yeah, they chose to do that so they could try to hold on to their shred of authority as long as they can. So what does that mean? Wheat and weeds. Well, this is about Christians, right? Christians, kings, and priests. But it's starting with Christians. Right, this kings, priests, yes, we all know the texts that are probably going to come up. We'll read about 5 accounts. It's not going to be a really long discussion, and I'll see who's hanging around answering questions. Good to see you all. Good to be with you all. But I got some questions kind of related to this, but then I thought, the whole kings and priests and Christians, this is... The Watchtower makes a huge deal of this, of course, right? It's a big part of their identity is the whole anointed as kings and priests, and the non-anointed are identifying and serving with them or them, right? Whatever you want to call it, Watchtower. Either way, that's a big part of their thinking. You know what I'm saying? If you're in Watchtower, you know what I'm talking about. And in non-Watchtower groups, it's not as much, I would say. Maybe it is in some ways. I just haven't experienced it. But in large part, my experience in talking to different groups in and out of Watchtower, it's not like a big idea that they think about. It's not big on their list of ideas, it seems. And yet it is a huge thing, right? It's like the ultimate in many ways. And really, that's the point we'll talk about. What ways, right? What ways for Christians, right? So we know about there are different types of priests, right? Different types of kings, right? We're not going to get into every single role or the big, long history of kings and the words for king. No, that's not this show. We're going to take select accounts involving kings and priests in the Old Testament and New, and we're going to talk about how that applies to me and you, right? It should be informative, interesting, and I hope you enjoy it. You can participate. I'll try to get to your points and questions. But let me go over a few things real quick, right? So good to see you all, though. Wonderful to have you. I mentioned several of you already. I'll get back to you. Kings and priests, for Christians. Exactly what is that? It's so different, huh? If you read my post and like what I was going to talk about, and by the way, the volume and everything should be good, but just let me know. We haven't done this in a while, so if you read my post, I cited like several things that kind of relate to what we talk about. Right? I talked about Moses and the Levites. I said, look at this, right? Look at Josiah, David, Solomon, a couple things like that. That came to mind that for me, Saul and Samuel, right? That's a big one. Those identify really quickly with significant events related to kings in the Old Testament, those figures or events related to them. We'll talk about a couple of them, a few of them. And then how that applies to the Christians, right? So we have these royal figures, right? Like David, Solomon, right? This is like the height of really power and glory in the Old Testament in many ways. But then there are many other kings, right? Very glorious. Is that what you think of when, as a Christian, right, you think of these ideas either now or if you think about it more like with Watchtower, whether it's about the anointed or not, just the concept, okay? Well, what kind of kingship are you thinking about? Right, we know Watchtower, because they talk about it a lot, they also depict it, you know? They do a lot of drawings or illustrations of the anointed, you know, on thrones and with crowns and ruling with scepters and all that. So biblically kind of related depictions, some of which we'll get to, but right. So that might be some of the ideas. If you've seen some of those pictures, that's probably going to be pretty prominent in your idea of what the Bible's talking about, you know, and I'm talking about the New Testament specifically now, and those figures that I'm talking about with the kings and the thrones and those things, those do kind of relate to the Old Testament royalty, kings and stuff, right? So what about priests, right? Where does that fit in? How does that relate to Christians in the New Testament? So you can kind of see where being a king might apply. Now, there's a huge difference, is there not, between what we are now and when we become kings and priests. That's total. We'll get to it, okay? Because you're only going to get that if you do at least one thing. Okay? Just one. Well, you know, there's a lot more, but there's just one thing you need to do. Okay? I'll give you a clue. The thief who died with Jesus, the evildoer, the criminal. How many things did he do? Now, might it be the one thing you're probably thinking, okay, he believed, right? A lot of the faith only people, you know, the way they view faith. They point to that and they say, see, what work did he do? I get that a lot. What work did he do? Right? Oh, I don't believe works earn you salvation. They just show you believe. And your belief's what gets you salvation. That's pretty clear to me in the Bible. But, you know, it's become complicated like everything else. Dragon. Either way, one thing. It's not belief. Yes, it is and it isn't, okay? I'm not saying it's not belief. That's not what I'm thinking about. And it's related to it and very distinct, as you'll see. It requires belief. So either way, yeah, to become a king priest in a Christian sense, that's a big deal. That's a big deal. Of course, right? It almost goes without saying, but we don't really say it enough, so I have to say it because I think it's just, it is, right? We take it for granted because it's something we don't do now, and we can't do now, we're not supposed to do now, but we are going to do later if we qualify, right? If we are in that group. So it's different. It's so interesting how it really has to relate to Christians now versus Jewish believers in the Old Testament, right? Because they had actual kings in ways that represented Jah and his authority. We don't have that today other than through the master, right? The master is the king. That's the whole point of him dying and being resurrected and given all authority and power and ruling until all his enemies are put beneath his feet. And the last enemy is death. So he rules all the way through the 1,000 years. No break, the whole time. Either way, believe you want, Watchtower. So we know that the master for Christians really is the only king we have. I mean, there are other kings, right? In the earthly sense, we do acknowledge, we're told to acknowledge. Show respect, show honor, right? We don't worship in the sense that God is to be worshiped. As long as that difference is set aside, we give them pretty much whatever they want. So what about now, right? What does it mean to be a king priest as a Christian now, right? It's, you hear a lot of different groups kind of talk about it in different ways, right? You have the Greek pagans, right? They talk a lot about the way that they're priests and fulfill these different roles from the Old Testament in their churches and in their marriages and things today. And of course, groups like even Mormons, right? They have a very structured temple service, as do the Catholics, right? The priests, right? And the pagans. So what does that really mean, though? We know that's not what that is, right? No, I said the New Testament, the apostles, and Jesus, we know that. No, don't go beyond what's written. Carry on their teachings. There's any dispute. Everyone comes together. We all agree. Holy Spirit, done. No pagan emperor. No, he's not contributing anything. He makes gigantic idols and worships false gods. No. That's how that goes, right? That's not what they did. Okay. So they go too far, right? They kind of became, the dragon, right? Dragon went insane. Dragon was going crazy. Still is, but back then, right, he was really angry because of right? Either way. So let's talk about a couple Old Testament texts and kind of let's look a little bit further beyond this whole royalty, right? The majesty aspects of being a king and even of a priest, right? The priests in the Old Testament are pretty well dressed and decorated. They don't think of it in the same way, obviously, right, in terms of wealth, but it is very luxuriant and holy. So we're going to look beyond that, though, right? Because Christians, even though there's a spiritual aspect to being royal and holy, that's not how Jesus came to live as a man, right? When they came to make him king, or when he spoke about being soft garments like in a king's palace, right? It was derisively, or he rejected it, right? Wasn't here for that. He was here to really focus and get serious work done, right? You want to be a king? You got to first learn how to serve one. And you got to learn how to serve the right one. That's the master. We know that because he showed us exactly the right way to be serving the King of eternity, the Father, right? Father's the ultimate. That's why the Son is given the authority and kingship and gives it back to God, right? Why? So that God can be all things to everyone. Well, if the Son is fully God in that way, like Trinitarians say, he would already be being God fully to everyone. during the 1,000-year reign. So not to get off on that, though, but the point is there's a distinction in authority. We'll get to it more in a moment. But first, let's just look at this Old Testament. A couple texts, right? I mentioned a few last time when I said, hey, we're going to get into this. So look at these examples. I don't know if you did or not, but let's just check out a couple. We're going to go to Deuteronomy 17. Let me bring up the Bible Hub and see who's here real quick. Kind of already said to some, but real quick, Miro's on fire. Good to see you, Miro. Very happy to hear about everybody there. And just let me know if you need anything else, if there's sincere people where you are. I know it's not easy to get. It's expensive for people to buy from Europe or countries outside the United States in many cases. You know people who are sincere, just let me know what you need. That's all I care about. Betsy. Nice. Speaking of sincere. And Czar. Where's Czar? Czar said something. Where was he? Something else. Oh, which one? Do you bought the JW Defended edition, Czar? Is that what you're talking about? No, you need to get the Proverbs translation. I'm telling you, I don't talk about it a lot because if you guys only knew how much time I put into that. And in a way, I'm kind of glad you don't. Well, I've talked about it. And you all, if you were with me this whole time, you saw me doing it, right? You literally saw me doing the Proverbs translation over more than 10 years, right? Like 12. So maybe more even. It was around 2011, 2010. I started tweeting and all that stuff. It was a little early, but then I really started just go. A lot was happening. I had a lot of time. Either way, I know Betsy's been here. So for over a decade, you saw me focused and pounding those out and just concentrate on giving the best I could. Then I collated the notes, the data, the details I knew you'd all want. I gave you guys some really good stuff on wisdom. Of course, the whole Proverbs 8 and other things in that book and the appendices. I'm doing Psalms right now. Now, there's a lot more Psalms. Some of them are shorter. I'm not going to tell you where I am. I still have a long way to go. Okay. But I'm doing it now from a finished structure, right? So what I did with Proverbs, I didn't start out that way. I had to bring it all together and then finalize and edit it. Now I'm starting with a fine. I know the dimensions. I know everything is just like it's all done. It's not edited, but as I'm doing it, it's in its final like text form and the whole formatting. So it's still going to take me a while, but I've done some. If you like the notes in the Proverbs translation, I've got 3 notes so far. Well, I've got a lot of notes in Psalms, but 3 that are just going to blow your mind. 1 on Christ, 1 on Lord, and 1 on God. And there's a lot of notes on those, but there's 3 really packed, detailed notes where I've brought together. I'm trying to keep this. I don't want this to like just be these massively long data notes, but some deserve this, all right? And I can reference them as points elsewhere and keep it steady. But there are occasions where I need to really explain things so you guys have at hand in the future all the details you need and the critical information that I think you will use well. You will be happy you have at your fingertips. So either way, I'm not going to talk about a lot. I'm going to keep going. I have a lot to do still. I'm simultaneously pursuing my translation work. I'm doing another book. I'm writing. I got a big, probably it'll come out maybe middle of next year. It's a very significant work. It is related to the Trinity, and that's all I'm going to say, okay? This is going to blow your mind. It's blowing my mind as I'm doing. That's good, though. Either way, so I'm doing a lot of stuff while pursuing my graduate degree, so I'm very focused on that. It's a very important graduate program that once you learn more about in the future, I think you'll appreciate what I've been doing. So I'm going to leave it at that, and I'm just going to keep going. I'm going to do as much as I can for you guys. Once I've finished that, once I'm done basically with my graduate work, once I'm finished with these writings, right? I don't want to say too much until I'm basically done, but I'll let you know kind of what I'm working on, what I've been doing, so that you're not unaware. And that's pretty much what I've been doing. That and work, of course. So, and I'll try to do these as much as I can, but the summer's been busy, and we'll probably be doing more shows as we get into September, October. But it depends. It depends on you guys, how much you want to do these shows and talk about Jah, Jesus, you, and me. So that's kind of just a little update before we get into the text. Let's go for it, though. Bring you guys up. Right, Bible Hub. Let's go to Deuteronomy. Let's use I was talking about one of my recent shows like a couple months ago, Christian Witness of Jah live discussion real quickly. I was kind of talking about Bibles I like. Someone asked me, hey, what Bibles do you like the most? And I said the RSV and the NRSV, which I still agree on. I'm probably going to talk about that more in other shows. In fact, I will. I've been kind of collating examples that I've been noting. So once I have enough of them, we'll do a show. But I gave Titus 2:13 as an example of why I like the NRSV and RSV. But really, it's the RSV. Sometimes it's hard to remember which one. That it has sometimes, mostly in the notes I found, I thought it was in the actual text. Maybe it wasn't some. I'd have to check other editions. But I noted that in recently looking at it, the RSV actually has kind of a Sharp's Rule friendly main text reading, but a non-Sharp's Rule friendly or NWT kind of friendly footnote alternate reading, which the NRSV does not. So I don't think the Titus 2:13 would be the best example of why I prefer the NRSV or the RSV. I just had remembered at least one of them had that either main text reading or alternate. And I do like those two translations for other reasons that I'll get into in another show. I don't always agree with it, but again, I agree with it more, both of them, more than the NIV for sure, and the King James. So that's kind of how I make those comparisons. But I wanted to add that a little bit more on the Titus 2:13 thing. Okay, if you saw that show. Let's go with, the King James is just the old English, huh? And the NIV is just gone. Let's go with the American Standard, right? New American Standard. So let's go to Deuteronomy 17. Okay, we're going to read a few accounts. Again, this isn't going to be a super long show. Maybe another hour, hour and a half. Maybe around total 2 hours or so. But I'll try to keep it as concise as possible. But still, we haven't seen each other in a while, so I kind of want to just update you a little bit. Now let's get to the primary texts. Okay, so Deuteronomy 17, we're going to read verses 8 through 20. Now I want you to remember what we're talking about. Okay, and it's going to all come back to you. Everything we were talking about before I was giving you kind of an update on what I'm doing. It's going to come back to you as we read these texts. You watch. Kind of summarized it for you. And then when you read these with me, I want you to think about the character. Okay, we're really looking at the character of the people. We're not looking at the royalty or the glamour or the accoutrements, the accessories, right? Those are all important, especially in these biblical accounts, right? They represent things and were ordained by God. So these are all special and holy. But that's not what we're looking at here. We're looking at the things that make these individuals worthy of those accoutrements and glory and majesty, exterior things that they get. We're looking at what the character of these people are, kings and priests, that make them deserving of that or did, and that might give us an indication of what Yahweh is thinking, Jah, when he's looking at Christians today. And we're going to get in the New Testament as well, right? We know Jesus is the ultimate example, but the Bible is an example in many ways. And we have all these priestly accounts and king accounts, and Jesus came in the line of David. And he is the high priest, right? He's a high priest like King Melchizedek, a king priest. So we want to understand these concepts a little bit more. We're not going to, again, get into like everything or the huge, broad technical discussion. We don't need to all the time. Let's just look at what these select accounts tell us in the Old and New Testament. Deuteronomy 17, starting verse 8. If a case is too difficult, this is Yahweh speaking through the angel of Yahweh. If a case is too difficult for you to decide, maybe more than one, right? Because as we know in the book of Acts and elsewhere, it says, Galatians, that the law was transmitted through angels. We know certain groups have a hard time comprehending plurals, both for angels and gods, but we're not those groups. And we thank God. If a case is too difficult for you to decide between one kind of homicide or another, between one kind of lawsuit or another, and between one kind of assault or another, that are cases of dispute in your courts, right? Again, this again points out, it's talking about unclear situations. Even here in the Old Testament, distinctions are made between what is clear, what is not clear. Then you shall arise and go up to the place which Yahweh your God chooses. So you shall come to the Levitical priests, or the judge who is in office in those days, and you shall inquire of them, and they will declare to you the verdict. Then you shall act in accordance with the terms of the verdict which they declare to you from that place which Yahweh chooses, and you shall be careful to act in accordance with everything that they instruct you to do. Okay, so this is how they viewed and approached the Levitical priests during this time, right? There was no king, of course, but these questions could be handled apart from Moses by means of the priests. And this is how they were to do it. And they were told to do everything they were told to do in accordance with the terms of the law about which they instruct you. Okay, right there. Okay, you notice even here, right? Even in the Old Testament, back when this was, formally structured, angel of Yahweh was in their presence, right? They're told, yes, they're told to do everything the priests instruct them to do, right? Yeah, only if it's in accordance with the terms of the law. So when we get, like today, we get a lot of ortho-pagans and others who claim this kind of priestly function where they, in an equivalent sense with bishops, are able to, or, in their canons and councils and creeds, basically tell us what to do, tell us what to believe, right? No, what you're allowed to do is not go beyond what is written. Even if you're going to try to model it after the Levitical priests, you follow the law. You don't have a biblical pretext for establishing new beliefs, doctrines, or laws. No, you're supposed to instruct people and teach people in the Old Testament about the laws, and in the New Testament, the teachings of Jesus and the apostles. Anything beyond that is beyond what is written and wrong. In accordance with the verdict which they tell you, you shall not turn aside from the word which they declare to you to the right or to the left. The person who acts insolently by not listening to the priest who stands there to serve the Lord Yahweh. They got me there. Shame, that's a shame right there. New American Standard, sorry. See, they made me do this. They made me, because of the, I'm discombobulated now because of their supplanting of the divine name with this ballistic expression. Okay. But the person who acts insolently by not listening to the priest who stands there to serve Yahweh your God, nor to the judge, that person shall die. So you shall eliminate the evil from Israel. Then all the people will hear and be afraid, and not act insolently again. Now, again, this has got to be in accordance with the terms of the law, right? It's the same in the New Testament, other than the fact that we're not bound to the terms of the law, right? Because in the New Testament, what? In Revelation 2, the Ephesian Christians are directly addressed by Jesus and told, you did good by not listening to the people who claimed authority. The ones in the super apostles, right? Yeah, no, you said, wait a minute. You priest, you bishop, you super clergyman, you pagan, right? How come what you're saying isn't true? Yeah, no, you're going beyond what's written, and you're lying, right? So we're not going to listen to you. We're not bound to listen to you. You are bound to listen to what is written. You claim to be a follower. You learned from the feet of the apostles. Oh, okay, so why aren't you teaching what they taught? Why are you contradicting what they taught? I'm going to go with what they taught. How about you? Okay, so that's Ephesians 2. We're not going to read it tonight. I just summarize it for you. The person who acts insolently, okay, that's good. Stands there, serves y'all. All the people, they're going to feel they know, right? This way they know. Whereas in the New Testament, right, we don't necessarily kill a person who doesn't listen to a priest who's acting in accordance with the law. But we might not associate with them, right? Just like Jesus says in Matthew 18, if they're not going to listen, if they don't listen to you and they don't listen to the other person, they don't listen to the Christians there, they're going to disrespect the clear teachings, right? In our case, 1, 2, and 3, anything that's very explicit doesn't require any interpretation, right? Don't murder, don't steal, don't lie, don't be a coward, don't be a pervert, right? These are not hard things to figure out. Do we need someone to tell us not to do that? Come on. Knowledge of good and bad. So right here, that's not always the doctrinally way to understand things, though, right? We have to actually have objective evidence and facts when it comes to teachings, like one God the Father. Okay, so we know, though, Ephesians 2, when the Christians saw the Ephesian Christians rejecting the liars, see, then the people realized something was going on. It's the same in Galatians 2. When the people saw Paul stand up to Peter and James and the Judaizers and condemn them, then they got the point, didn't they? Well, what if Paul doesn't do that? What if Paul doesn't condemn Peter to his face and lets him keep creating division? What if the Ephesian Christians don't stand up to the liars? Right, everybody suffers and gets hurt. Exactly. So the Christians who are following the character of these people aren't going to let that happen. Look, when you enter the land which Yahweh your God has given you and you take possession of it and live in it, and you say, I will appoint a king over me like all the nations who are around me. You shall in fact appoint a king over you whom the Yahweh your God chooses. One from among your countrymen you shall appoint as king over yourselves. You may not put a foreigner over yourselves. Anyone who is not your countryman. Okay, what's the lesson here? Right, well, I'll tell you what one lesson is. I sure wouldn't let Constantine have been my king, my emperor, other than in name only, right? I wouldn't be listening to him. I wouldn't be following him. Why? He's a pagan emperor. Yeah, he has these giant statues and images to false gods and panegyrics to false gods. Right, and it took him like several decades before he actually confessed a non-Trinitarian faith and got baptized. Exactly. So I wouldn't let, like, following the Old Testament, I can see here, okay, we don't let someone who's not like one of us, right? We don't let someone who's not a Christian act like they're in this role, whether it's an actual king and leader that isn't really a Christian role, right? That's not how We can certainly be involved in the affairs of the world in a way that doesn't compromise ourselves, but becoming an emperor, redefining Christian doctrine while you're worshiping false gods, no, that's not anything a Christian would ever do. So, we want to make sure that we're, at least in the sense that we can take something from this text, we're not letting other people tell us what to do who aren't clearly committed to what we do, right? Right. So is there, you've got a Christian associate, right? And are they partaking? Do they tolerate liars? Do they act like you owe them something when you barely know them at all? Or even if you know them? Why would someone who claims to be a Christian act like you owe them anything? That's not a Christian. No. So we have to be careful because everybody thinks they're this or that. I'll tell you what, I'm going to have to take a look at what you're actually doing. You don't have to, no one has to be perfect. It's not about, never making, in fact, it's just the opposite, right? We got all these people out here, especially at Watchtower. They're like just judgment machines, right? They literally run around and judge everybody who's not in Watchtower or who is. If you don't listen to a bunch of proven liars, doesn't mean everyone in Watchtower has been a leader's bad. There've been some good people, I'm sure sincere. They're liars. What they're telling you is not true. You want proof? You're not the great crowd. No, you haven't ever been the great crowd. Did you know that? And you're not right now. No, because even you and the Bible teach the great crowd shows up after the Great Tribulation. Okay? The reason they tell you you're the great crowd is because that makes you think you're always just about to die or live with them. So you're polarized. And that's what they've kept you in for about 100 years. So get the hell out of there and start living like the master and developing the character that you're going to need to be a king and a priest if that's what you're after. Okay, and that's going to require you to do a lot of suffering and serving right now. Not always in the worst ways. But what are you willing to do? You just want to have like pleasure all the time? Well, that's not really going to work, is it? Look, in any case, he's not to acquire many horses for himself, nor shall he make the people return to Egypt in order to acquire many horses. Since Yahweh has said to you, you shall never again return that way. He shall not acquire many wives for himself, so that his heart does not turn away, nor shall he greatly increase silver and gold for himself. Of course, we know that this is something that many of the kings did, or that Yahweh did to and for them. Either way, he's telling them here not to appoint a king over them who's going to show, right? So this is why I told you earlier. You see now? Well, I said don't look at this exterior stuff right now. Because there's always going to be examples you can point to. Well, what about, forget that. We already know that, right? We already know there are good examples or acceptable examples of having a lot of stuff, having a lot of wives, having a lot of gold, and not. Okay, so right here, what we're looking at is the type of king in the context of the Levites they're talking about, right? So we have all this going on. We had people who would not listen to the priests, and the priests would give instructions, and then they would appoint a king. And they were not to appoint a king who was a foreigner, someone who wasn't, in our case, in line with their thinking, right? Can two walk together unless they be in agreement? No. So that's how we apply this in a Christian sense. Someone who's not going to be encouraging us to put a lot of burdens on us, right? Or go back to a place we know isn't good for us. Especially if Yahweh said, no, don't go there again. Right? And our heart should not be focused on gold, multiple women if you're a man, right? It doesn't mean you can't have those things, okay? That's not what this is telling us, especially in a Christian sense. These are context-specific declarations that even they are not followed by kings that come after in all respects. That's not the point, though. We're trying to find out what kind of person we should be. What kind of things was Yahweh talking about? Moses and these priests and this king that was going to start to be appointed. Should be a fellow men. Shouldn't be trying to go back to Egypt and get all these things, all this gold. You shouldn't be someone who's telling you to to focus on these things, right? No, because the king is supposed to get their focus on Yahweh. Everything is about Yahweh and the Messiah that this nation is supposed to bring forth. That's not going to work as well or at all, even if they're not focused on what's most important. The same way for us today, it doesn't mean all these things or any of them individually are bad. If we don't focus on cultivating the character we need so that our heart doesn't go after them, it's just hard to think of us as a king or a priest, right? How are we going to be viewed that way when we're overly thinking, right, of this kind of stuff? It's not going to happen. Now, that doesn't mean we won't fall off and come back. That's the way it goes sometimes. But this is the character we're looking at, right? Yahweh's talking about, you want a king? Okay. Then when you get a king, make sure you don't have him do this to you. Now it shall come about when he sits on the throne of his kingdom that he shall write for himself a copy of this law on a scroll in the presence of the Levitical priests. Right? So the king obviously has to be very serious about God's word, his laws, what he requires, right? Now, it's not the same for us. We don't need all these laws and to follow them perfectly to satisfy Yahweh. They're still all good laws and they're still all great, but in the Christian way of thinking, right, we take from this the importance of kings and priests with regard to God's words, his teachings, his laws. And this king had to make a copy for himself, handwritten by himself, in the presence of the priests. That way they all know, right? The king starts acting crazy like many of them did. Then the priests know that the king knows that you're not supposed to be doing those things. But they still did many times. Either way, that's supposed to be a protection and of course, give them information about God's will. So kings and priests are very focused on that. Not to just show everybody they're wrong and we're right, right? But to do the will of Yahweh. And it shall be with him, and he shall read it all the days of his life, so that he will learn to fear Yahweh, his God, by carefully following all the words of this law and these statutes, so that his heart will not be haughty toward his countrymen, and that he will not turn away from the commandment to the right or to the left, so that he and his sons may live in his kingdom in the midst of Israel. All the days he has to read it, so that he'll learn to fear Yahweh, right? The beginning of wisdom. That's what that is. Because when you fear Yahweh, you realize, maybe I shouldn't. Sometimes we forget because we're stupid sometimes. But we don't make a habit of it, right? So we've got to carefully follow what we know is true. We won't be haughty, right? We look at this in a Christian sense today, and I look at it especially in Watchtower. Unfortunately, Watchtower people, a lot of your leaders are pretty haughty, pretty proud, right? They are. They're not supposed to be teaching these lies, telling people about these chronologies and events that the Bible does not clearly teach or it contradicts. You're not supposed to be constantly driving fear into everybody because you think the end is so close. What are we going to do? Well, here's what you do. You relax and you show confidence and faith, and you're not supposed to be anxious, right? You can't add a day. cubit, what the master say. So if someone's making you anxious, that's the wrong way. You're not supposed to be driving yourself crazy. If you do, you're stupid. Hey, stop doing that. What did Jesus say about wars and reports of wars? You're going to hear about them, one after another. Boom, boom, all the way to the end. Don't worry about it. Yeah, of course, if it comes to you, you're going to have to worry about it. But what is worrying about it as it's already there going to do? So why worry about it until it's there? Right? We're not supposed to allow ourselves to get distraught as kings and priests. We're supposed to be following what God says, listening carefully, doing what we can, and not acting arrogant. We're not judging everybody, right? I can't believe you said that. Who are you? Who made you the authority over what someone can say or do? Are they serving you? Oh, so you really have no business at all, right? It's so funny what some people think sometimes, right? The way people interpret things. People don't even know what swearing is. Swearing in the Bible is about oaths. It's not about using harsh words to describe a fatso or a pig. And yet some of you act so arrogant and haughty, you just can't stop judging other people who say things correctly that need to be said. Instead of doing what you think is right, you criticize other people, don't you? Right. That's your heart getting haughty towards your countrymen. You were told to do that, not to do that all the way back in the Old Testament. Unfortunately, the people who talk the most about the Bible either have never read it all or don't read it very well. That's why we get all of these blimps out here like Sam talking nonsense and people following them to their deaths because they're acting stupid. You can be blind as a perverted bat and see he's an idiot. He's just a maniac, right? Most of these guys. I mean, look at how they're going insane. All this arguing. These guys can't figure out anything. So we need to be very careful, right? You should not be getting close to people you just met or you don't even know. Have you met this person in person? Oh, they're just someone who argues the Trinity with you? Okay, that tells me nothing. You know how many people that could be? You know everyone in Watchtower does that, right? Okay, and they don't partake. They're not Christians. So why are you getting close to someone just because they argue the Trinity or something? Why do you feel the need to study the Bible with someone when both of you have been studying it for 20 years? Here's an idea. Why don't each of you go and talk to people next to you and create a group in person and stop gossiping in these online areas where you don't even know the people you're talking to, other than you all know the people you're talking about. 1 Samuel 14. 1 Samuel 14:52 through 15:35. This is good. Check this out. This is the big one, right? That was kind of a little just Old Testament, right? We're kind of still in the law, and we can see how the king they don't even have a king yet. And it's talking about the kind of king they want, kind of person you should be, right? You shouldn't have your heart in all these places, right? Just like Jesus said, don't let your heart become weighed down with overeating, over drinking, the anxieties of life, right? Look at the flowers of the field. Not even Solomon was as great as them. Yes, we all like nice things. I love them, but I don't rely on them. I don't really even care necessarily, other than I like them, and I'll take them if I can. I don't define myself by that stuff. I define myself by this stuff. Okay, am I taking a stand for what's right? Am I trying to do what's right and praise God and help other people? Am I giving of myself so that people have an opportunity to better themselves? Well, when I think about that, the answers are yes. Can I do better? Yes. But that's what I do pretty regularly all the time. So that's all. I don't think of other people or what they're doing or not doing. For whatever reason, it seems like I get wind of all this stuff and people just unable. Like I've said before, it doesn't matter how long they've studied the Bible. They have no idea what to do next. Nothing. So they just gossip and talk about other people. They have no plan. The plan is either Armageddon comes or it doesn't. There's your plan, right? And you can come up with something better than that. Verse 52. Now the war against the Philistines was severe all the days of Saul. And when Saul saw any warrior or any valiant man, he attached him to his staff, right? Building the army. Now we're going to get into some stuff that I've talked about in other shows, or at least one other. Why God allows sometimes the slaughtering of women, children, infants, and stuff like that. So I'm not going to get a lot off into that here, although it comes up. But I just want to warn you, we're going to talk about the destruction of Amalek. And I have talked about it before if you want to look up the text related to it in 1 Samuel, which are basically right here. So just type in 1 Samuel 15 in my channel, it should come up. I think I've got it in the text. It's on the thumbnail. There's a Christian Witness of Jah discussion show, though. Either way, I've talked about it before. It should come up. So focus, though, again, we're focused on the character of the kings and the priests. We know from Deuteronomy 17 that the priests were the people who had to be capable of resolving issues when Moses couldn't handle things. There was no king yet. The priests had to take over the function, and only in accordance with the law, not their own authority, were they allowed to resolve issues that were complicated for the people. And then we saw how the king that would come, be appointed over them, had to make a copy of his law, a copy of God's law, in the presence of the priests. He had to read it regularly. He had to not act haughty with his countrymen. He had to not be someone who was going to cause the people to think about going places. Yahweh said, don't go there. And I just took you out of there, right, Egypt? Or be dwelling overly on the burdens of materialism. Things we all need and enjoy, but there's an excess, is there not? So a real king is not going to be having you focus on that according to those texts. You're going to be focused on the law, right? He's got to focus on it. It's not just you. It's the king has to be the most focused on that law. He's got to make his own copy. You were made, the reason you were a king is because Yahweh saw something in you that he wanted the people or to have the people see and to be administered. So let's see, 1 Samuel, start in verse 1. We're going to read 35 verses, so pay attention. Then said, wait, let me check. I forgot. We do occasionally get what we call a perv out. No. We have some people who come because they can never stop thinking about like false doctrine with the Trinity. It blows their brain apart and they can never get it back, right? It's like the false doctrine, the fake God of Constantine. What happens is they never learn, right? I could do, and I have, right? If you just type, no man has seen God anytime, John 1:18, Exodus 33:20, it's as clear as day, right? The whole character, Hebrews 1:3, I did it recently, right? Number 5. Yeah, well, if they're exact, well then why can we see one's face, not the other in glory? Exactly, because they're not the same in glory. That's the whole point of character. We've talked about it. We don't need to keep talking about it, but we get people who can't stop because they're gone, right? They have collapsed, and that's all there is to it. Prodigal Truth, Mr. Up-and-Comer, very nice, and others. But, we had someone bring up a subject totally unrelated. Can't focus, right? They can't do it. Probably Sam, right? He's totally undisciplined in every way, including food and sodomy. 1 Samuel 15, verse 1. Bring it up here. Then Samuel said to Saul, pay attention. This is probably the most, well, it's hard to say. This is a big one. Pay attention. Then Samuel said to Saul, Yahweh sent me to anoint you as king over his people, over Israel. Now, therefore, listen to the words of Yahweh. This is what Yahweh of armies says. I will punish Amalek for what he did to Israel. And just remember briefly, and it comes up but briefly, the account prior to this, when they were coming up out of Egypt, and Yahweh sent the fear of Yahweh into the nations so that they would have time to collect themselves, right? They were kind of straggling and just coming into formation. They had all the weak people, right? All the weak and infirm people and the young and the women in the rear. And Amalek came, the Amalekites, and attacked them and started slaughtering the women, the children, and all the weak people as Yahweh is taking his army out of Egypt. And they're in no condition to really fight, right? Let alone from the rear and with their weakest people. And Yahweh, it says he sent, the fear was sent. They didn't listen. Amalek didn't listen. Now, I know a lot of different groups, a lot of Muslims, for example, they don't like the whole idea of Yahweh doing this kind of thing, right? Killing women and children. But, these things happen either way. Whether you think Yahweh did it, there are women, children, infants dying all the time in some of the most horrible ways you can imagine. So whatever God does exist is allowing that to happen. And I believe there's reason why, but I don't think it resolves the problem of it happening by saying that this isn't an account where God made that happen. But Muslims do believe in the flood, right? So it's hard for me to think of a more horrible way to die than being drowned like that, right? The anticipation, the buildup, and then the actual drowning. It was so bad, the Bible says that Yahweh said he's never going to do it again. It was justified, but that doesn't mean he has to keep doing it if he felt that there's a better way. A lot of things that people don't understand, at least that I think, in terms of the Bible and God changing what he's going to do. There are more than one good option, right? Just because he changes from one option to another doesn't mean he's changed. The options were already there in the first place. He's just picking a different option at a different time. There's nothing wrong with that. In fact, many things occur that make that wise, especially in a world where you allow things to happen. Either way, this is something that was allowed to happen. I will punish Amalek for what he did, and that he obstructed him on the way while he was coming up from Egypt. Talking about the Israelites. Now go and strike Amalek and completely destroy everything he has. Do not spare him. But put to death both man and woman, child and infant, ox and sheep, camel and donkey. Just like Amalek did in defying the fear of Yahweh. Now Yahweh will do to him. He's Yahweh. He can do whatever he wants and does and will. And here, I think the reasons are clear. Then Saul summoned the people and counted them in Telam. But you can disagree. I'm not here to in any way express hostility towards those who disagree. I just have reasons for why I believe that this is sufficiently acceptable in the context of Yahweh and the actions of these humans. Saul summoned the people and counted them in Telaim, 200,000 foot soldiers and 10,000 men of Judah. And Saul came to the city of Amalek and set an ambush in the wadi. But Saul said to the Kenites, "Go, get away, go down from among the Amalekites so that I do not destroy you along with them. For you showed kindness to all the sons of Israel when they went up from Egypt." So this is a good thing, right? This Saul was made king for a reason. And we're not going to get into all the reasons why, but they're there. And this is one of them, right? Even though we're going to get to his problems and highlight the qualities of the priest, Samuel. But there's a reason Saul was king right here, right? There's good character in Saul. He just didn't cultivate it. But he understood fairness, right? He understood kindness. He understood reciprocity. You treat Yahweh's people well, I'll treat you well. Okay. But that doesn't mean you defy Yahweh. So the Kenites got away from among the Amalekites. Then Saul defeated the Amalekites from Havilah, going toward Shur, which is east of Egypt. He captured Agag, the king of the Amalekites, alive, and completely destroyed all the people with the edge of the sword. But Saul and the people spared Agag and the best of his sheep, the oxen, the more valuable animals, the lambs, and everything that was good, and were unwilling to destroy them completely. But everything despicable and weak, that they completely destroyed. Verse 10, then the word of Yahweh came to Samuel. Yahweh is always watching. I regret that I have made Saul king, because he has turned back from following me and has not carried out my commands. And Samuel, the priest, was furious and cried out to Yahweh all night. Samuel got up early in the morning to meet Saul. Okay, so just think about that though, right? Yahweh comes to Samuel and says, after they destroy in large part the Amalekites, I regret that I made Saul king. Can you imagine the impact that that had on Samuel? If you've read about Samuel, right? This is someone who was trained to be a priest from a boy. And he grew and more and more, became very, it's just his whole presence shouts, respect and follow Yahweh, right? So Yahweh comes to Samuel and says, I regret that I made Saul king, because he didn't listen to me. He turned back from following me. What did he do? He actually spared somebody, didn't he? He didn't kill someone. Oh, several, right? What did he not destroy, in fact? But Saul and the people spared Agag and his sheep and animals and valuable things. That's what Yahweh is talking about. That's why he is so angry. Samuel became furious. The Hebrew here is he cried out all night, it says. Okay? All night. You have a priest of Yahweh, trained from boyhood, furious and shouting out. You understand? Why would he do that? I thought the Bible in the New Testament says you're not supposed to be around those given to anger, right? Have you had a bunch of fake Christians pull that one on you? Right, because they're not like Jesus or Samuel, are they? No, they would never be like them, because that's not who they are. Would they make a whip, walk into a temple, and start smashing the tables and whipping the people and the animals? Yeah, I didn't think so. I don't think so either, right? No, because they don't want you to get angry. Because when you get angry, that means you care. And when you're angry, you're not going to let a fat pig have control of the air. And when someone does not listen to Yahweh and pretends that he cares, and you know just how angry Yahweh is at what that person's doing, yeah, you're going to get furious. Yeah, tables are going to get broken. right? There's going to be some problems. If you're at all like Samuel or the Son of God, most Christians are not. Prepare yourself. Samuel was furious and cried out all night. Samuel got up early to meet Saul, and it was reported to Samuel, saying, Saul came to Carmel, and behold, he set up a monument for himself. Yeah, he starts talking about himself all the time. How he thinks he's some big special thing. Because what? A well-known podcaster wanted you to come on and show everyone how fat you are? Right? Gotta be kidding me, man. Who are these people? Who are these people that follow these people? Exactly. Monument for yourself, huh? Sounds like Constantine. Sounds like governing body. It's all about them, huh? Yeah, it is. Money, attention, devotion. Sounds like them. Set up a monument for himself just like them, then turned and proceeded on down to Gilgal. So Samuel came to Saul, and Saul said to him, Blessed are you of Yahweh. I have carried out the command. Yeah. Samuel said, well, what then is this bleating of the sheep in my ears, and the bellowing of the ox which I hear? Saul said, They have brought them from the Amalekites for the people. Right? It's for the people. People spared the best of the sheep and oxen, the sacrifice to Yahweh, your God. Right? This is for your God. This is all for Jehovah, Watchtower people. This is all for Jehovah. Oh, but you're not following Jehovah's commands. What did Jehovah tell you through the Son? You're not going to know the day or the hour. You're not supposed to be writing about these things. What are you doing? But the rest we completely destroyed. Then Samuel said to Saul, Stop. Let me inform you of what Yahweh said to me last night. And Saul said to him, Speak. Okay. All right. So Samuel said, Is it not true, though you were insignificant in your own eyes, that you became the head of the tribes of Israel? For the Lord anointed you as king over Israel. And the Lord sent you on a mission, Yahweh, see this law, and said, Go and completely destroy the sinners, the Amalekites, and fight against them until they are eliminated. Why then did you not obey the voice of Yahweh? Instead, you loudly rushed upon the spoils and did what was evil in the sight of Yahweh. Then Saul said to Samuel, I did obey the voice of Yahweh. I went on the mission which Yahweh sent me. I brought Agag, the king of Amalek, and I've completely destroyed the Amalekites. But the people took some of the spoils, sheep, oxen, the best stuff, designated for destruction. It was going to be wasted. The sacrifice to Yahweh, your God, at Gilgal. I did do that. Samuel said, Does Yahweh have as much delight in burnt offerings and sacrifices as in obeying the voice of Yahweh? Does Yahweh care about how many hours you put into service? Does Yahweh care about how many idols you have? Does Yahweh care about anything but doing what he says clearly and without interpretation, requiring you to make up stuff that may or may not be true, that we can't tell because it's not clear? No, it says right here, he likes it when you listen. So when you don't make people think they're a group of people, you don't and the Bible doesn't teach they are, right? You would never, ever do that, let alone for almost 100 years do that, unless you're an evil group of people, maybe misled initially, right? We all know Watchtower in this case, maybe at one point in the early 30s, 40s, around that time, and their total failure with 1914, 1919, 1925, maybe they still had residual beliefs that made them think they were so close now that this applied. Okay, we're almost 100 years past that. You're not the great crowd, and you never were. Obey. Don't care about your sacrifice. To obey is better than a sacrifice. To pay attention is better than the fat of rams. Fatso. For rebellion is as reprehensible as the sin of divination, and insubordination as reprehensible as false religion and idolatry. All you pagans lying to people about the great crowd, the anointed, partaking, a trinity, these statues and idols, your canons and creeds, and all this stuff that's beyond, against what is written. You have rejected the word of Yahweh. He, therefore, has rejected you from being king. It's that simple. Okay, right there. There's no way you're going to be a king in character if you reject the word of Yahweh. It's not possible. Remember what we read. Right, the king in Deuteronomy 17, he had to be someone who didn't focus on other things, right? He had to make his own copy of the law. He had to read it daily. He had to not be haughty. That's not rejecting the word of Yahweh, right? No. Here we see it again. King had to make his own copy. That's how important it was. In the presence of the priest, so they knew he knew. And therefore, there was no excuse. And now, Samuel's like, wait a minute. You know what you were told, and Saul's like, what? Hey, I did do that. I did everything I was told to do. What are you talking about? No Trinity. So then Samuel's like, no, you did not. Yeah, you were told very explicitly, you don't know the day or the hour. So why are you so fixated on it? You were told explicitly you don't need anything to be written to you about dates, times, and seasons. Why you keep writing about it? Okay, you're told very explicitly the great crowd comes after the great tribulation. Why do you keep lying about it? Okay, we're told very clearly one God, the Father. Why all the lies about it? Saul said to Samuel, I've sinned, for I violated the command of Yahweh and your words, because I feared the people, I listened to their voice. Now then, please pardon my sin and return with me. Now that's good, right? He finally accepted the truth. Return with me so I may worship Yahweh. Samuel said to Saul, I will not return with you, for you have rejected the word of Yahweh, and Yahweh has rejected you from being king over Israel. Then Samuel turned to go, but Saul grasped the edge of his robe and it tore off. So Samuel said to him, Yahweh has torn the kingdom of Israel from you today and has given it to your neighbor who's better than you. Why? Because they listen, unlike you. Your neighbor's better than you because they listen to Yahweh. Also, the glory of Israel will not lie nor change his mind. For he is not a man that he should change his mind. That's what I was talking about, right? Just like when he does, right? When he says, I regret that I made Saul king. Changing your mind, right? There's a difference, right? It's literally within the same context. I doubt they were retarded. It's one thing to change your mind and contradict the course you're on with the change. It's another thing to change your mind with regard to the things on the course you're on. In other words, there's nothing changing here in the plan of Yahweh for the Messiah to come through this royal line. I'm pretty sure he knew the tendencies of a lot of these kings in ways that would be not like he would want. And so the change from Saul here, because he chose not to listen to Yahweh, is simply accepting that adjustment along the same course. That's not changing your mind in terms of like with Moses, in a way that would not have allowed him, because he wanted to keep using Moses. If he would have just eliminated everybody, including Moses, that's changing your mind, right? You're not using anybody that you wanted to use. But he wanted to just use Moses and wipe them all out. And so that's just adjusting the same course. It's a big adjustment, but that's not a change of mind. He kept doing the same thing with different people. Same here. So he goes on to say, this last part's very important. Then Saul said, I have sinned, but please honor me now before the elders of my people and before all Israel, and go back with me. Remember, he said he wouldn't go back with him? So that I may worship Yahweh your God. He's still king though, right? So it says, so Samuel went back following Saul, and Saul worshiped Yahweh, right? So this is a very complicated situation, you know? It's not so simple. Saul's not listening, and the destruction of Amalek was very important, right? When it actually happened, if you watched the other video I did on 1 Samuel 15, we looked at the other accounts and it talked about how Yahweh marked that event. And he said, we're going to come back and destroy them because they didn't listen to the fear I sent forth. And he attacked us in the weakest parts anyway, in ways that Yahweh's not going to tolerate that. He doesn't have to either. And I don't think if someone attacked your rear kavan and killed your women, children, and weaklings, when you made it very clear not to do that, I doubt you'd be so gracious yourself. That having been said, look at this. Then Samuel said, okay, so right, Saul's the king. He and the army went out and destroyed Amalek except for Agag, the king of Amalek, and the best of his things. So Saul was repudiated, right? His king, he had some qualities, right? He showed that he was aware of people who were friendly to Yahweh's people, and he told them to leave, so he wasn't destroyed. That's good. Loyalty, friendship, a lot of good qualities that we should not fail to mention with Saul. And he was effective. Obviously, he captured Agag. They did destroy the people, so he was a good leader in the military sense. But he didn't do what he was told, and he had pity on Agag, and he was humiliated by Samuel, shown some respect to give him back his dignity because he is still king, and he appealed for it, right? He apologized. So these are all good qualities, right? Look at all the imperfections, right? We have Samuel, not necessarily imperfection, I think it's correct, right? Furious and shouting out to Yahweh all night. What do you think that shouting was, by the way? I can tell you one thing, it wasn't pleasant. Because when the priests and kings of Yahweh know Yahweh's will, when we've already experienced what it means to do his will, then you just act yourself. We're not putting on a pretense. I guarantee you that's how Samuel was. Because Yahweh knew Samuel was furious, as it says. That's how he wanted him to be. That's how we all should be when it comes to Christianity and people who are opposing us directly, lying, disrespecting God. Okay, so what are you seeing here? Well, I'm seeing that if you do those, if you don't listen to Yaol, you're not going to be an effective king. You'll take his word seriously. And you're not going to be a good priest if you're not someone who is outraged at those who fail in the most basic of ways for no reason other than they chose to disobey and disrespect God. So what does Samuel do? He's the priest of Yaol. Verse 32, then Samuel said, bring me Agag, the king of the Amalekites. And Agag came to him cheerfully. And Agag said, surely the bitterness of death is gone. Right? How wrong. Isn't it interesting how these pagans fail to see the death in Yaol's people's eyes, right? They have no clue. They misread it every single time because they're stupid. They're the stupid ones. And they think everyone else is stupid. Just like Agag. Nothing's going to happen to me here. It's all good. Right? He had no idea. And he's looking right at Samuel. But Samuel said, as your sword has made women childless, so shall your mother be childless among women. And Samuel cut Agag to pieces before Yaol at Gilgal. Hacked him to pieces. So do you understand the level of outrage and loyalty this priest had for Yaol? In other words, he doesn't care about anybody else, does he? Does it look like Samuel? Right? I mean, it took a lot of pleading by Saul to get him, just to give him a little dignity, right? Does it look like Samuel cares at all about anybody but one person? Me too. And the answer is no. Then Samuel went to Ramah, but Saul went up to his house at Gibeah of Saul. And Samuel did not see Saul again until the day of his death, though Samuel mourned for Saul, and Yaol regretted that he made Saul king over Israel, right? That's a powerful account. I probably went a little longer with it, but I had to read the whole chapter because the only way to, you look at it, right? 1 Samuel 15, I had to read like the last verse of 14 to contextualize it properly. But you really kind of have to read the whole chapter, all 35 verses. So either way, it's a good account, right? It's very descriptive. I'm saying, obviously, we don't like killing, right? We're not made to like killing. We're not made to kill, right? We don't have implements of death in our being. We have to manufacture that stuff like idiots and retards. Those are the stupids. Those are the people who are made to get beaten, okay? That's why Jesus said, you want to live by the sword? You want to live by the... That's how you're going to die, you idiot. They're stupid, okay? Can't help them. Let them go. Protect yourself, that's different. That's not stupid, okay? You're not running around like a reject trying to hurt people or do criminal stuff with weapons that are not part of your being. Those are the dummies. You let them go. They're going to get annihilated anyway. That's why they're here. So, now, those of us who aren't fully retarded and the seed of the devil, basically, right? We have options and potential that, depending on the law of our heart or how Yahweh sees us, we can respond to his will. And as Christians, right, we We're not saying we have to do the exact same things all these Old Testament people did. Whether it's make a full copy of the law, which isn't a bad idea, but right, it's not always the easiest thing. We're not saying you have to, I'm not saying you have to do all these things in order to be a Christian type of king or priest, right? That you have to hack people to pieces who don't listen to Yahweh. That's not what I'm saying, because we all know we're not a king and a priest yet. Not in the sense in which we're talking about being, that we'll read about in a moment, and that is more equivalent or fitting to these types of roles in the Old Testament, where they are actual kings, they are actual priests, or spoken about as being a king in Deuteronomy 17, in ways that we can then look at the character of the people being talked about and say, okay, well, we're not ruling like that yet, or we're not offering sacrifices or hacking people to death today as Christians, but there's something in those accounts and in the character of those people, whether it's following God's words, adhering to his words, making a copyright, studying it carefully and not adding a bunch of stuff, what other people tell us it means. No, we don't go beyond what is written, okay? So we already know how much studying has to be done here. Exactly how much more do you need to know before you can tell people, hey, the God of history is Yahweh, the God of the Bible. Yeah, and if you don't believe it, that's okay. But if you're interested, we meet every day. We try to, cultivate good morals, and we just preach three things, right? God, Jesus, you, and me. And we'll let you decide the other things. So if you're interested, we meet and we agree not to do certain things like the other Christians talked about by Pliny and others after the New Testament. And we find their example to be one that is similar to the apostles, right? Certain people that are following what they taught until they start adding all these other things and theologically and structurally until it's nothing like what is written. Okay, we really don't need to study that much. Yeah, reading like this, meeting together, it's a good thing. It reminds us. But how much more? Like, how many times do you need to have this per week, for example? Per month? They probably barely had that, if that, in the first century, at their best times, right? Maybe at their homes, right? They're doing things every day. Of course, that's great. If you can find people you can work with, you can cultivate these qualities and things, right? Focus on God's law. Focus on Proverbs. Focus on Jesus' teaching. We don't need to try to figure out complicated things in order to live as Christians, cultivate kingly and priestly qualities that don't tolerate error, liars, and people who don't listen. Okay, they don't listen to what the Bible says when it comes to dates, times, and seasons. They're liars. They keep telling us we have to listen to them to get salvation. They're liars. They keep telling us the majority of people in the organization shouldn't partake or aren't Christians like them, but this other group that isn't here yet, they're liars. Exactly how much do you need to know before you act on that? Well, if you're like Saul, you're going to wait until you're absolutely humiliated, and hopefully you'll have the courage to apologize and maybe save some of your dignity. Or if you're like Samuel, right? You're going to hack those fatzos to pieces, right? You're not going to tolerate anything. And you're going to stand up for the truth, not a bunch of liars and pigs. 2 Kings. That's why, everybody, that's why we have the world we do today. That's why we have all these perverts, fags, and homos, child abusers, and liars. All these homos in the Catholic Church, liars. Most homos lie to themselves and others. That's not a good lifestyle, and everyone knows it. Great, you want to do it? Go for it. No one is stopping you. It's abusive and destructive. It's a fact. You cannot argue with that. All you can do is lie about it, okay? So we don't need to tolerate these liars and fakes. Okay, all they're doing is running from the truth, just like Watchtower, just like Mormons, just like Catholics, all of them. Are they focused on money? Yeah, no, that's not the master. Are there a bunch of statues, idols, gold, and opulent buildings? No, it's not the master. Are they promoting themselves above it? Come on. Are they washing feet? That's the master. Okay, where are you seeing that? Go there. Do those things. This is not hard to identify or even do if you're like Samuel. If you're like Saul, it's going to be very hard for you. You could be a king. You could be a leader. You could be someone good in warfare. But you just can't listen to Yahweh, can you? You just can't stop lying about times and seasons or about being a group of people you know you're not, can you? No, you can do all those other things. Just can't be obedient to Yahweh and stop lying. 2 Kings 22:8. Then Hilkiah the high priest said to Shaphan the scribe, I have found the book of the law in the house of Yahweh. And Hilkiah gave the book to Shaphan, who read it. Then Shaphan the scribe came to the king and brought back the word of the king and said, Your servants have emptied out the money that was found in the house and have handed it over to the workmen who have had the oversight of the house of Yahweh. Moreover, Shaphan the scribe informed the king, saying, Hilkiah the priest has given me a book. And Shaphan read it in the presence of the king. When the king heard the words of the book of the law, he tore his clothes. Then the king commanded Hilkiah the priest, Ahikam the son of Shaphan, Akbor the son of Micaiah, Shaphan the scribe, and Asaiah the king's servant, saying, Go, inquire of Yahweh for me and for the people in all Judah concerning the words of this book that has been found. For the wrath of Yahweh that burns against us is great, because our fathers did not listen to the words of this book to act in accordance with everything that is written regarding us. Have your fathers in your group listened, or have they been defying the words of Yahweh's book? Well, that shouldn't be hard to tell, should it? It's just hard for you to do. Not for Samuel, not for the Ephesian Christians, not for a king priest. So Hilkiah the priest, Ahikam, Akbor, Shaphan, and Asaiah went to Huldah, the prophetess, the wife of Shallum, the son of Tikvah, the son of Harhas, the keeper of the wardrobe, and she lived in Jerusalem in the second quarter. And they spoke to her. Then she said to them, This is what Yahweh, the God of Israel, says. Tell the man who sent you to me. This is what Yahweh says. Behold, I'm going to bring disaster on this place and on its inhabitants. All the words of the book which the king of Judah has read, since they have abandoned me and have burned incense to other gods so that they may provoke me to anger with all the work of their hands, you idolaters. My wrath burns against this place, and it shall not be quenched. But to the king of Judah who sent you to inquire of Yahweh, this is what you shall say to him. Remember the king who found the book, who was given the book. He read the book and he tore his clothes. He was so blown away, right? He knew immediately they had not listened. The book had been hidden away. This is what you shall say to him. This is what Yahweh, the God of Israel, says regarding the words which you have heard, since your heart was tender and you humbled yourself before Yahweh. When you heard what I spoke against this place and against its inhabitants, that they would become an object of horror and a curse. And you have torn your clothes and wept before me. I have indeed heard you, declares Yahweh. You see, when he sees somebody who is, they're serious, right? They really believe this stuff. There's no joking around. That's what he wants. That's when he notices what you are. Therefore, behold, I am going to gather you to your fathers, and you will be gathered to your grave in peace. Your eyes will not look at all the devastation that I'm going to bring on this place. So they brought back word to the king. Now, listen to this. This is what the king did next. First, we check the perv out. Bug B. Guzman, too. Thank you. I appreciate that. All of you. Appreciate that. WEO. All right, let's get back to it. We want to break momentum. 2 Kings 23. Then the king sent messengers, and they gathered to him all the elders of Judah and Jerusalem. The king went up to the house of Yahweh, and every man of Judah, all the inhabitants of Jerusalem with him, the priests, the prophets, and all the people, from small to the great. And he read in their presence all the words of the book of the covenant, which was found in the house of Yahweh. And the king stood by the pillar and made a covenant before Yahweh to walk after Yahweh and to keep his commandments, his provisions, his statutes with all his heart and soul. Just like the master said, love Yahweh your God with your whole heart, soul, and mind. That's number one. The second is love your neighbor as yourself. His statutes, his heart, his soul, to carry out all the words of the covenant that were written in this book. And all the people entered into the covenant. This is it. This is what we should be doing. Is it in the book? Is it in the New Testament? Is it Jesus, the apostles, and their clear teaching? It's not going beyond what's written. That's it right there then, right? Is it unclear at all? Okay, then each person gets to choose. Real simple, right? Then you answer the master, Messiah, the one who actually judges you individually according to your deeds, right? No, not in association with a church, not in association with a bishop, not because you follow the council of creed or any kind of canon. No, he's going to judge you individually according to your deeds, according to the things that are written, and that you hopefully didn't go beyond. New Testament, apostles, Jesus. Right, so you're not judged any other way than that. That's why you need to be able to stand on your own, just like that. And if there are two of you there, great. Master's there. Although, wait, one of you might be taken and one left. Master said both, right? We don't know. We're not master. We do know, though, that we're going to be judged individually according to our deeds. It says that multiple times in Revelation and elsewhere, John 5. So, right? We don't need to think about whether we're grabbing onto the skirt of the Jew, i.e. the watchtower, alleged anointed people, as this great crowd of people that doesn't exist yet, because we think these are just such good people. If we just follow them, we'll be saved. No, that's called lying. That's called following a false Christ. There is no salvation in anyone else. What are you talking about, No Trinity? No salvation through the watchtower. No salvation through anyone or anything else. So you should, as a king priest, not think anything else, should you? You would never think, I have to be with this group. No, you might have to, figuratively or spiritually as a Christian, hack the king to pieces yourself. Because the one who is king isn't doing it. Right. What does it say right here? The king stood. Okay, we read that. Look, reforms. Now, this is what he does next. They all entered into the agreement, right? Every one of you can meet together with one or more of you and agree. One God the Father. One Lord Jesus Christ, the sent forth Savior, Messiah, golden rule. That is not hard. That is what will save you. that is something you can teach anybody and everybody using any version of the Bible without controversy. The only part that would be controversial is the divine name, and we've made that clear. So you should be able to deal with everything here. We don't need to get caught up with these perverts, liars, and fags. Okay? We don't need to pay attention to these fat, blasphemous pigs who are worse than unbelievers. They have nothing at all like the character of a king or a priest, do they? So that's immediately what you should recognize in these people. Yeah, we're not better than you, and you're not better than me, and you're not at all like a king or a priest that I can see. You're not furious about standing up for Yahweh. You're not shouting all night to him, out to him, because of people who fail in the worst ways. Let's look at what Josiah did. The king commanded Hilkiah the priest, the high priest, the priests of the second order, and the doorkeepers to bring out of the temple of Yahweh all utensils that had been made for Baal, for Asherah, for all the heavenly lights. And he burned them outside Jerusalem in the fields of the Kidron Valley. He carried their ashes to Bethel. Then he did away with the idolatrous priests whom the kings of Judah had appointed to burn incense on the high places in the cities of Judah and in the surrounding area of Jerusalem, as well as all those who burned incense to Baal, to the sun, to the moon, to the constellations, and to all the remaining heavenly lights. He also brought out the Asherah from the house of Yahweh, disgusting, outside Jerusalem to the brook Kidron, and burned it at the brook Kidron, and ground it to dust, and threw its dust on the graves of the common people. This is King Josiah and the high priest and the priests, and he tore down the cubicles of the male cult prostitutes, you fags, which were in the house of Yahweh, you fat pig. You get up here and you blaspheme God, and you talk about lusting after men like a fag, like a male temple prostitute, you pig, and your church is full of gays. You got to be kidding me. This is Christianity. Okay, we're not a homo house. You want to practice anal abuse and sodomy? Stop talking about Christianity and shut down this fat pig who keeps getting up here like a male temple prostitute, where he puts himself in and around holy things, God, Jesus, the Bible. He's a pig. Where the women were weaving hangings for Asherah. He brought out all the priests from the cities of Judah and defiled the high places where the priests had burned incense, from Geba to Beersheba, and he tore down the high places of the gates that were at the entrance of the gate of Joshua, the governor of the city, which were on one's left at the city gate. Nevertheless, the priests of the high places did not go up to the altar of Yahweh in Jerusalem, but they ate unleavened bread among their brothers. He also defiled Topheth, which is in the valley of the son of Hinnom, so that no one would make his son or his daughter pass through the fire for Molech. And he did away with the horses that the kings of Judah had given to the sun at the entrance of the house of Yahweh by the chamber of Nathan Melech, the official, which was at the covered courtyard. And he burned the chariots of the sun with fire. The king also tore down the altars that were on the roof, the upper chamber of Ahaz, which the kings of Judah had made, and the altars which Manasseh had made in the two courtyards of the house of Yahweh. And he smashed them there and threw their dust into the brook Kidron. And the king defiled the high places that were opposite Jerusalem, which were on the right of the Mount of Destruction, which Solomon, the king of Israel, had built for Ashtoreth, the abomination of the Sidonians, for Chemosh, the abomination of Moab, and for Milcom, the abomination of the sons of Ammon. He also smashed to pieces the memorial stones and cut down the Asherim and filled their places with human bones. Furthermore, the altar that was at Bethel in the high place, which Jeroboam the son of Nebat, who misled Israel into sin, had made, even that altar and the high place he tore down. Then he burned the high place, ground the remains to dust, and burned the Asherah. Now when Josiah turned, he saw the graves that were there on the mountain, and he sent men and took the bones from the graves, and he burned them on the altar and defiled it, in accordance with the word of Yahweh, which the man of God proclaimed, the one who proclaimed these things. Then he said, "What is this gravestone there I see?" And the men of the city told him, "It's the grave of the man of God who came from Judah and proclaimed these things which you have done against the altar of Bethel." And he said, "Leave him alone. No one is to disturb his bones." So they left his bones undisturbed with the bones of the prophet who came from Samaria. Sounds like Saul, doesn't it? When he saw that the one man was there who was in the area where they were going to kill the Amalekites, but he was good to them. So he spared him. He has a trait among kings, being able to tell who deserves to live and die. Just like Solomon with the women, the one who lied. Kings have to know. Kings have to act. We don't doubt. We are not confused. We don't gossip like bitches or even normal women. And yes, Paul does say you do that, women. So knock it off if you do that. But most of our men are a lot like you women in that way nowadays. So when I say bitches, I'm mostly referring to them. Either way, you want to be a king? You want to be a priest? Okay. So let's just go ahead and see what that would mean in the New Testament then. Revelation 2. We're going to wrap it up here in the next 30 minutes, everyone. Thank you for joining me in Christianity. Pumped up. Love being with you guys, talking about job, reading accounts like this, right? I get pumped up when I read this stuff. Same with we're not going to read it, but Jesus and the temple, right? It's so funny to me how people are, right? Yeah. I'd love to see any of these people show me what they think that's like, right? Why don't you Christians who aren't Christians but who lie because you're cowards, the people who are going to die according to Revelation 22? So listening to you would be dumb, right? Right. Well, in any case, I'd like to see those people show me how they think Jesus entered the temple and the temple area and started whipping people, throwing over their tables and chasing them out. I'd like to see them show me how that was done. Yeah. No, he wouldn't just be like calmly walking up and saying, "Oh, hey, just turn your table over, okay?" No, okay? See, if you don't have that in you to some degree, if you don't become furious at people who disrespect Yahweh and Christianity, keep working on it. Revelation 2. Revelation 2, check this out. Listen. Revelation 2:18. To the angel in the church of Thyatira write, the Son of God, who has eyes like a flame of fire and feet like burnished bronze, says this: I I know your deeds and your love, your faith, and your service, your perseverance, and that your deeds of late are greater than at first. But I have this against you. Now, this should be a big deal, right? I mean, he's like leading with all this is all super stuff, right? This is like Christian gold. Love, faith, right? Service, perseverance. That's kind of like what we're supposed to cultivate as much as possible. But, right, in spite of them having all that, to be a king, a priest, which they're not here, right? This is training for us. We're not, none of us are really qualified in that ultimate sense, and neither were any of the Old Testament either, right? But we all will be in the future when we have sinlessness and we follow Yahweh. We'll be able to, if we demonstrate, right? The one thing, remember, what's the one thing you need to be able to do to become a king priest as a Christian in the future? One thing. Get to it. But what's this? What's this one thing he has against them, right? They tolerate the woman Jezebel. Tolerate. That's an interesting word, isn't it? What does that word mean to you? Think about what that word means for a couple seconds. Tolerate. Well, what are they tolerating? Right? Tolerate means you accept, right? You're basically allowing. You're okay with it. Even if you're not, you're permitting it, so you are. If you're not and you're permitting it, then you're a coward, right? You really don't think it should be happening, but you're tolerating it. You don't like it, but you're tolerating it. You're letting it happen. You understand? So when you tolerate all these idols and iconography and false doctrines, when you tolerate people lying to you about prophecy and chronology, telling you things that are not true, you're really being a coward. And that's why cowards won't make it. You can't. A coward is like the worst thing you could be, because it shows you don't believe. You couldn't possibly believe, or you'd be doing it. You're just lying. You're like, it's very dangerous when you're a coward, because you not only compromise yourself, but most of the time people around you. And that's what happens, right? Look at these groups. They're cowards. They tolerate all this nonsense, these lies. Okay, we can prove there is no creation ex nihilo is scientifically false. It's not possible. It's against God's physical laws. Why do you keep teaching it then? Making us look stupid. Bible doesn't teach that either. You're stupid. Right, so we tolerate this nonsense if you do. You're not supposed to be doing that. Look. You tolerate what she teaches and how she leads. Right, talking about sexual immorality and eating things sacrificed to idols here, a big problem in the first century and today, but false teachings, right? And Jezebel, this ties in directly with what we read in 2 Kings with Josiah. We didn't read the part about Jezebel, but he took care of her too, didn't he? Right. Threw her out of a window. She got eaten by dogs. it's very important that you understand Yahweh. Yes, loving, mercy, and that's all important. When it comes to Jezebels, when it comes to pigs and blasphemous fatzos who don't take care of their kids, you need to understand that Yahweh will not, he doesn't tolerate Agag. No, neither did Samuel. That's why he was furious and hacked him to pieces with a sword. Right, that's why Peter cut someone's ear off with a sword. Because he reacted, he was angry, and he was defending the master. That's why the master destroyed people's tables and their animals and their whole arrangement and whipped them. You cannot tolerate liars and pigs. You should not be tolerating people who lie to you about times and seasons. That's over. You should not be tolerating people who lie to you about idols and God and his name and his mother, right? I mean, these should all be really obvious to you by now if you are a king priest Christian or anything like it. You would never be able to be, you wouldn't be lingering in confusion. It would be like automatic. Can't have it. I gave her time to repent and she doesn't want to. Okay, Watchtower's had time. They don't want to. The Catholic Church has had more time than any of them. They don't want to. None of them want to. If they did, they would. Behold, I will throw her on a bed of sickness and those who commit adultery with her into great tribulation. That's what you're going through right now. You're with these Catholic pagans. You're with Watchtower. Any of these fake groups. That's what you're in. Yeah, you might have some semblance of normalcy and morality, and that's a good thing. They do provide that, many of them. That doesn't make them correct or right. It's like with Agag. Yeah, he destroyed almost everybody, just not the king and all the best stuff. Okay, so the best stuff doesn't matter, does it? No. Just because they have the best stuff, if Yahweh says no, that you don't take that stuff. What matters is you listen to me in these ways. Okay, you stop lying to people. Okay, why do you need to go to these people? Why can't you just follow what the Bible says and attract people to you and keep doing that? Because you've been made to be afraid. It's fear that keeps you from doing that. It's fear that kept me from doing it until I stopped being afraid. Does it look like Samuel was afraid? No, and sometimes it's not always about being afraid. Sometimes you're just not doing what you're supposed to do, like Saul. Okay? Now he repented, that's a good thing. But maybe he should have been the one to kill Agag. Maybe while he's being confronted with the facts, no, you didn't do what you were supposed to, Saul. Maybe he should have realized, oh, okay, where's Agag? And he should have killed him, right? He didn't do that. So in spite of his contriteness, in spite of his being sorry for failing that way, disrespecting and humiliating Yahweh, he still did not do what he was supposed to do. And that's why Samuel had to step in and do the job of the king for him. And if this demon slut whore doesn't listen to the master, he's going to kill her children with the plague, and all the churches are going to know that he searches the minds and hearts. He'll give to each one according to your deeds. Remember what I told you earlier, right? Does it sound like the master plays around? Does it look like the master's here to play games with everybody and sing Kumbaya, right? No. This is very serious stuff. Now, most of these religions are fake, though. So they've made people just treat it like nothing, like a joke. Look at Sam, right? We get this fat pig up here every day. How could you possibly take this stuff seriously with a pig-faced fatso like that, blaspheming God on a regular basis and making everyone look stupid, no one more so than himself? Look at all the time and attention that fag brings to himself when it should be going to Yahweh and the Master. Can you believe that? You know how punished that guy's going to be? That's right. He's going to get hacked to pieces spiritually, if not literally, because he's a fatso and a fag and a blasphemer and a pig. I say to you, the rest who are in Thyatira, who do not hold this teaching, you have not known the deep things of Satan, as they call them. I place no further burden on you. Okay, so no further burden. That means nothing. That means no councils, no creeds, no nothing. Nevertheless, what you have, hold firmly till I come, the one who overcomes. The one who keeps my deeds until the end. I will give him authority over nations. Remember, I told you, there's one thing you need to do to become a king priest as a Christian. Just one. Right there. You need to overcome. You need to conquer. NASB says overcome, NWT says conquer. To the end. He shall rule them with a rod of iron as the vessels of the potter are shattered, as I also received authority from my Father, and I shall give him the morning star. You know, if we jump to chapter 3, that's all very important right there. I think a lot of people just don't focus on what's happening there. How serious the master is, right? And of course, he's very loving and forgiving, but I got to tell you, some of the people I see sometimes, I think, I can't believe they have the nerve to talk about other people, right? I mean, I only do that when it's like the most, either if I'm being nice or if I'm addressing someone in a harsh way, like Sam, you got to be a pretty despicable pile of garbage, right? Like automatic, like just garbage. Like you're clearly a resistor. You're an anti-Christian. Just like we see throughout the New Testament, references made to specific people who are like that. Or even with Samuel, right? Getting furious. If you don't have some of that in you, that should shake you to your core. That you don't react to someone to lies. Right now, the extreme to this can be you become so judgmental, right? You're not supposed to run around and judge everybody. You're not the master. We're talking about very obvious things here. Mostly the people who are lying to you and not doing what they're supposed to. Not the people who are and who are just struggling along the way, which is all of us. There's a difference. And a lot of people don't seem to be able to make it. In any case, Revelation 3:14 through 21, we're getting close to the end. Check this out. To the angel of the church in Laodicea write, the Amen, the faithful and true witness, the origin of the creation of God, says this: I know your deeds, that you are neither hot nor cold. Now remember how he said to the Christians in Thyatira, right? We just read in chapter 2, he says, I know this, I know what you're doing, right? He's very aware. Yeah, he doesn't need you gossiping about another person because he already knows that what that person has done. Right? You're not doing anything but making it worse by dividing people and distracting them from the master. We're not here to do that. If someone sins against you, Did you read the words of the Master in Matthew 18? Someone sins against you. You have no business being involved with other people. So if it's not involving you, shut up. You're neither hot nor cold. I wish you were hot or cold or hot. So because you're lukewarm, you can't do anything. You sit around, you ask the same stupid questions year after year, and you never change anything. You keep supporting liars and doing nothing to stand up for the Master. You're like that, I'm going to vomit you out of my mouth. Okay, this is the Master. This is Jesus saying he's going to vomit you. You understand? This is why when I hear certain people lie and misrepresent the Master, I get very upset, like Samuel, because you're pig-faced fatzos and you should shut your mouth. Because you say I'm rich and I become wealthy and have no need of anything. You don't know you're wretched, miserable, poor, blind, and naked. And all that stupid, fat, and dumb, okay? That's what you need to understand. I advise you to buy from me gold, but refined by fire so that you may become rich. White garments that you may clothe yourself, and the shame of your nakedness may not be revealed. Like right now. An eye salve to apply to your eyes so that you may finally, I added that, see. Those whom I love, I rebuke. Oh, so rebuke is love. Got it, right. Just like we're told. I rebuke and discipline. I'm going to vomit you out of my mouth. Therefore, be zealous and repent. Behold, I stand at the door and knock. Okay. This part right here, this is why I'm not really going to tolerate anyone going forward. You're either like me or close to it or beyond it in terms of Christianity and your dedication. You're not supposed to be perfect. I don't expect you can't be. I expect you to be trying and not gossiping and talking about people. And if you can't figure out how to encourage people, and get your ass to an old folks home or retirement or handicap facility and help the poor and the lowly. We don't need a bunch of male bitches or temple fags getting up here lying about the Bible or causing division because you don't have the courage to stand up to proven liars. Now look at this. If you haven't had this experience in one way or another, and every Christian has, I'm not going to take you seriously. I can tell immediately who has and who hasn't. Right here. I stand at the door and knock. If anyone hears my voice and opens the door, I will come in, and I will dine with him and he with me. Okay, do you understand that? Does everyone who just heard that and read it with me understand that? Have you experienced that? Okay, if you're in Watchtower, you have not. It's not possible. I'm not sorry. You're choosing to follow proven liars because you're a coward. You're tolerating Jezebel. I'm not going to feel sorry for you. All you have to do is open the door. So I already know you're not doing that if you're on here gossiping and acting like a little bitch. The one who overcomes, I will grant him to sit with me on my throne, as I also overcame and sat with my Father on his throne. One who has an ear will hear. Now, if we jump to Revelation 20, it's very serious because, we've got a lot of people who claim to be Christian running around. They have no idea what it means to be a Christian, a king, or a priest. And the Watchtower people seem to be the ones most aware of all three of those things, and they do none of them. They're not Christian. They don't partake. They think they're someone they're not. They follow proven liars. They're not kings or priests either, and they're not even trying to be. They follow proven liars. If we're going to build a community of people who aren't going to fracture the second a fatso or a pig starts telling you, oh, I can't believe how hard I am. If you haven't figured out by now who you're supposed to be listening to and who's a fat lying pervert, and if you haven't figured out you're supposed to stand on your square and not gossip to people who aren't sinning directly against you, you're not going to make it here. Go back to Watchtower, go back to the Catholic Church, go do your own thing. We're not tolerating gossipers, bitches, fags, or anybody who's going to do anything but try and cultivate love for one God the Father. The Son is the sent forth Savior and the golden rule. Any attempt to diverge or distract onto individuals' choices in terms of how to react to liars, fags, pigs, and fatzos, no. Okay, read the Bible. Take a good look at the people who were chosen as kings, priests, and the Messiah. Be like that and be furious to the point where you shout out all night and you make a whip and you destroy the statues, the idols, you burn the bones on the altar. That's when I know we will have made it. When we're like that, when we have people like that, when at least we have some people who are trying to be like that, then we'll have the people who are like this. Revelation 20, I saw an angel coming down from heaven holding the key of the abyss, the great chain in his hand. He took it, took hold of the dragon, the serpent, the devil, the Satan, the fag, and bound him for 1,000 years, threw him into the abyss and shut it and sealed it over him, that he might not deceive like the liar he is, you sodomite king, the nations anymore, till the 1,000 years were completed. And after these things, he must be let loose for a little time. Gonna run right back to sodomy. And I saw thrones, and they sat on them, and judgment was given them. And I saw the souls of those who were beheaded. Is that you? Are you ready to die like that? As a king and a priest? Because of the testimony of Jesus. Not because of the lies of the Watchtower or the counsels and the creeds of these fags. Because of the word of God. And those who had not worshipped the beast or its image and had not received the mark on their foreheads and on their hands came to life. And they reigned with Christ for 1,000 years. And you know what that is, right? This is the fulfillment of the promise in the Old Testament, the vision, the prophecy of Daniel. It's not just the Son of Man. It's also the Christian king priests. Daniel 7:27. The sovereignty, the dominion, the greatness of all the kingdoms under the whole heaven will be given to the people of the saints of the highest one. His kingdom Speaking of Christ's kingdom, of which we are a part, as we just read in Revelation 3, we sit down with the Father on his throne, just as Jesus sat down with his Father on his throne, just as Jesus received authority right here from the Ancient of Days, his God and Father. That's exactly what he's talking about, Revelation 2 and 3. That's exactly what this is talking about in Daniel 7:27, Revelation 24. People being given a kingdom, authority, right? Rulership. That's a big deal. That's not a small thing. It's not something you just get, No. You have to die or be taken away, right? The Bible does say there's a time when the Lord returns and some are taken up. But you have to be at the point where you're faithful, right? You have to conquer. You have to be at the point where you have conquered, if that's the case. So that's all you should be focused on. All this other stuff, while it has some importance, right? It really isn't that important. What's more important is that you follow the Master, that you look at examples from the Old Testament and the New, and that you follow them to the extent that you're capable. Not everyone's the same. It's much easier maybe for me than for some others to rise up and start turning tables over and whipping the asses of liars and thieves. Do I want to do that? Do I like to do that? No. Do you think the Master wanted to do that? Like he's like, hey, let's go to the temple today because I'm going to kick some ass, right? I'm going to really lay a beat down on these guys. No. He did it because he was outraged that anyone would dare to disrespect his Father, Yahweh. Right? Because he cared. When someone's really your Father, when he's your God and Father, there's no way you will be anything but furious when he's disrespected. Sometimes, like many ancient kings and even people like Samuel and others, right? Josiah, Solomon, David had someone sent to the front line to be killed just so he could take his wife. And yet he was a man after God's own heart. Yahweh does not look at individual failures. He does not take account of those things the way you fags do. You're literally told by his son to stop judging. He's like, will you stop? And then Paul says, stop judging before no one can stop judging other people. Probably because it's the only thing that takes the focus off of their failures. Well, here's a suggestion. Focus on your failures like Saul did. Even though you may have failed like he did, by focusing on them, you can apologize. You can become a better person. And then Samuel, even though he was going to leave you because he couldn't stand your disrespect, just might stick around and walk you out in front of everybody so that you're not humiliated more than you should be. Either way, I highly recommend everybody pay attention to yourselves. Become the best Christian you can be. And if you think you can help someone else do that as well, great. If you can't, and all you can do is judge someone you barely, if you know at all, you need to find something else to do. We're not here to serve you or each other in those ways. If you can't help people become better, and if you can't let them be who they are, a Christian, a king, a priest, then stop lying to yourself about who you are. Because that just means you're none of those things. Focus on Yahweh. focus on the master and treat others the way you want to be treated, okay? Why don't you do the things you think everyone should do? And the people that want to do those things too will do so. As long as you worship Yahweh, the one God, the Father of the Bible, and you accept Jesus as the sent-forth Savior and fulfillment of the biblical prophecies about him, and you follow the golden rule to treat others the way you want to be treated, that's all I need to know. And if you don't sin directly against me in a way where I should then come to you and say, hey, what happened here? Then I should never be worried about what you're doing to serve God or Christ. It's not my business, is it? No, it's not. Because we're serving God in Christ. So you're either helping people do that or you're hurting or just doing nothing, in which case, vomit, right? That's what the master said. So I appreciate that a lot of people think that they are better than others in ways when that they're not or that don't really matter. But I wanted to do this show so that we all had a perspective on what it means, what matters in terms of being a Christian, a king, a priest. We won't get lost in the sauce in terms of ruling and all this authority and get carried away with things that haven't happened yet, right? The Great Crowd Watchtower, they're not even here yet and they think they're here. They think they've been here over almost 100 years and they're still not here. Go figure. We're not going to do that. Paul says, we don't rule yet. We're not ruling as kings yet. We can be kingly, we can be royal. The golden rule is called royal, the kingly law in the Bible. That's being a king, being a priest, standing up for Yahweh's name, what he says, not tolerating disrespect. But at the same time, knowing that not all religions are correct or agree with us. Okay, so we don't need to engage everybody who doesn't agree with us or teach the right things just because they're choosing to do so. Once we've held them accountable, we've shown they're wrong, we move on, and we help other people do the right things. It's up to each person how much time you want to waste with these liars and pigs. Some people are sincere. We do need to look out for kids. But I'm here to tell you that the only way we're going to be able to become what we all know we should be, and that is servants of God working together without blindly following anyone who's not teaching things that are clearly taught. The only way we're going to do that in an enduring, productive way is by looking at ourselves, leaving everybody alone. This is the Christian witnesses of Jah. 3 things. Everything else is up to you. Okay? You're not supposed to like everything else everyone else does. You're supposed to shut your mouth. Focus on 3 things. If you can't do that, go join someone else. Because there's a lot of other people who would be happy to do those things. And I don't want to be distracted by people who keep interfering. Okay? You can't stand up to Watchtower. You don't belong here. Go over there and get your courage. Okay? Wait till your balls drop. We're not here for you. You either figure it out and you get your shit together, or you go do your own thing. And we'll keep doing our thing together. And when we fail, we'll admit it, get better. We don't need to gossip. We talk about things openly. We don't need cowards, liars, and pigs here. These are kings, priests, Christians. So with that having been said, I hope you all enjoyed today's message. I got pumped up. I got passionate because that's what kings and priests do. Can't not respond to Yahweh in the ways that are true. Make mistakes. Got a lot to learn. We all do. But we're not going to learn anything by gossiping and listening to a bunch of perverted fags, are we? So let's get our priorities right. Simplify your life. Start small. Add 1, add 2. Wake up. Praise you know who. In Jesus' name. and commit to your family or whoever's with you to just do something. Tell the truth. Help someone in need. Be productive. You don't always have to leave them a Bible verse. You don't always have to say, oh, by the way, I'm a Christian. No, let them see you're a Christian and then ask you about what you are. And then guess what? They already know what you are and you can tell them what it means. Rethink your strategy. Rethink the people who are either inspiring you or causing you to be depressed. If they're at all causing contention, division, arguing over things that are not clear, what are you doing, right? How much time are you spending with things that you aren't going to figure out beyond what you already know anyway? It's called wasting your time. So hopefully we haven't done that much of it today. I did get pumped up, so I wanted to say these things and let you guys know that I think about you, and I'm hoping you're all doing well. Doing a lot, like I mentioned earlier. I'm trying to prepare us for the future. I'm thinking long-term here. I'm focused on the ones who are going to come after us or who are coming up with us. But for a lot of you who are already in this for a long time like me, if you haven't gotten your act straight and you're not focused on the right things, don't bother me. Yeah, I'm not here to go backwards. I'm not here to go sideways. I'm here to go straight forward into the coming age. And you're either on that path with me in your own way, doing things your way, or you're not. You want to be on that path with me? 3 things. That's all you need. I don't need to hear. I don't need to hang out with you. Okay? This isn't like a social club. This is for people who are committed to worshiping God. Focus on that stuff. So in any case, I know I kind of went off, got a little pumped up. I don't want to say too much of the same thing, even though it's good. Looks like you guys are all good. So I'm going to let it stay that way. Good, right? Maybe I'll come back someday. I don't know about Sunday, which is tomorrow. Got a lot to do. But I'll see where I can try to be live again and talk about positive things. Hopefully encourage you. Address the people I need to address. We've got a lot of pigs, fatzos and liars. And by fatso, I mean a gluttonous, undisciplined pig. It's all throughout the Bible. If you don't think so, try reading it. With that having been said, I want you all to have a wonderful afternoon, evening, and weekend. Do the best you can. Where you fail, forget about it, learn from it, and then forget about it. Move on, do better next time. Trust me, you have a happy life. Stay away from lames, losers, and liars. Read God's word as often as you can. Keep it simple. Try to remember the basics. The things most of us forget or don't focus enough on. That's what's going to matter, not all this other stuff. Some stuff can be interesting. Some of the technical things, some of the speculation, it's mostly a waste of time. Focus on the main stuff. Use your time to better yourself, your family, get an education, make money. Just don't get distracted. Like Deuteronomy 17 told us about the king, shouldn't be having people think about things that Yahweh said not to. Right? But we all like nice things. We all want to be successful. That's good. Don't be distracted. Don't forget Yahweh and honor the master. Listen to him. You don't need anybody else other than his own followers that came after him. You have those. You have enough. You have Proverbs. We have more than we need, quite frankly. So use it. Make the best of it. Enjoy each other's company. Stay away from people who backstab, lie, and who allow their own personal projections to get in the way of Christian association. Do those things. I guarantee you'll be happy. I am, and I try to do them all the time. So with that having been said, may Jah bless you. In Jesus' name.